So I hope we have a very fruitful session. And please, Dr. Megha, we will have a question answer session also, right? At the
Ye-
close of the,
yes, ma'am.
yes. Okay, surely. Okay, so I'll go ahead. So we start with the what, why, and when of a literature review. And if we were in an offline mode, I would have asked participants to definitely participate. Can they speak up here, Dr. Megha? I know that chat I found was disabled, but
Yeah, ma'am, they can raise their hands and I can unmute them.
oh, okay, okay. So, in case of anything, if someone would like me to stop at a particular point, please go ahead and use that raise hand feature. So, we start with a very simple question. What is a literature review, or ROL, or lit review as we call it in short? Hmm. So, definitely a literature review provides a summary of all the research in particular which is relevant to the so okay, let me back up. All right, so you are right, as a scholar you're writing a research paper, or before writing a research paper you are designing your research proposal. Hmm? So that you could be going full thrust into a literature review because you are designing your research proposal, you're formulating your research proposal, or you may even have completed your research and now you are needing to, you know, submit your synopsis, submit your thesis or dissertation, as it may be called. It's different in different countries. And you could also be or you could be writing the literature review because you are wanting to send your paper for publication. Definitely the literature review you would have engaged in before you uh, began your research and while you were formulating your research proposal, and you could be revising it at various steps when you're ready to turn in your synopsis, you're ready to turn in your thesis, or you're sending your paper for publication. So a literature review provides a summary first and foremost of the research in that area that you have selected for your own topic, own special. You have a you would have come up with your research aim, and in relation to that research aim, the summary of researches that already exist. So it's very importantly a summary first and foremost of research literature, but of course it you could be summarizing relevant theory, which you must. You could be summarizing relevant practice, which you must. Policy, techniques. You could be summarizing the incidence of a particular, suppose you are doing a clinical research, it could be the incidence of a particular disease. The literature review provides the background or the context for your own research. Very, very importantly, a literature review is a logical argument in favor of your research. Why is your research needed? What is novel about your research that has to come through the literature review? I'm going ahead with the what, why, and when of a literature review. We go to the why. Why is it needed? Let's look at the words collaboration, community, and consensus. So it's a myth that a researcher is in an ivory tower by herself or himself. Research and human knowledge are activities that require a community which is a professional community, no doubt. It requires consensus within the discipline. It requires collaboration within a research team and across the field among scholars. There are interdependencies in knowledge construction. Each researcher takes up from what
Ma'am,
other, yeah,
ma'am, sorry to disturb, but then there is one hand raised by Real
yes,
Hermit. Do we need to
yes.
take question simultaneously or at the end?
Let me finish this slide and then surely, but in case the person can't hear or something, is what is the, go ahead and ask what is the question.
Yeah.
What is, yeah,
Hermit, you want to speak? No, he has put down the hand, ma'am. You can
by
continue.
mistake, maybe by mistake.
By mistake. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. But let us be in communication. So
Yes, ma'am.
there are interdependencies in knowledge construction. So nobody, when you're doing a research, you take up from what others have already completed and you extend that. So without a literature review, the interdependencies in knowledge construction would not be evident, and you may fail to actually conduct a research which is valuable, because you may be duplicating someone else's research if you've not done an excellent literature review. So when you understand that human knowledge has interdependencies, no one is doing their doing a project from scratch to end without any relationship to what is already known. We always start with what is known. Perhaps we disagree with some of the aspects of what is already known, and that is what our research is about. But we should know very well what is already known, so that whether we are agreeing to it, whether we are disagreeing with it, whether our research is in what way is the our own research extending the field, extending the theory, or extending the conceptual knowledge in the field, or extending the methodological knowledge in the field. That has to come only vis-a-vis the literature review. So human body of knowledge is a common, within each discipline there is a common body of knowledge which is consensual. Where does this word consensual come from? It comes from the word consensus. Okay, so each professional community, there are key agreements within the community which form the foundation of the field, and that foundation is continued to be strengthened and built further through every single research. And it is the literature review that shows the connection of your research with the existing body of knowledge. So very one more point that I have here for the why slide. Your research will be of sharper and valuable quality if you have done a thorough lit review. Going ahead, going to the when. So when does a scholar engage in a literature review? All right. So surely the literature review, it's not a linear process. So it's not like, oh, I'll complete my literature review, then I will make my objectives and my research aim, my hypotheses. You definitely, as a scholar, you should be reading research papers in particular, reading research journals, getting into conversations with your peers, with classmates, with other doctoral candidates, with your guide, with your teachers, with your colleagues, uh, writing down some ideas. All from this reading, talking, discussing, observing, you would have some idea of which area of research you are interested in, which method is interesting you, which subtopic is interesting you. Then you get into deeper reading in that subtopic. Here too, so the literature review goes hand in hand with your early preparation as a scholar, with your early strategies for selecting a topic itself. The topic is not going to just drop from the sky. Sometimes you are in an institute where the professors tell you, these are the areas that we are interested in. Please, um, select a topic in these areas. And even there, you have to read the literature in order to know which precise variables, which precise models, which precise approaches would you like to adopt for your own research. So your formation as a scholar goes hand in hand with reading literature, talking about literature, writing down points when you read something on your phone or on your notepad or on a piece of paper. Once you have declared a particular area as your area of interest, then you read the literature deeper in order to identify the subtopics. Uh, at While you are traversing the world of researches in an area of interest to you, you would be able to identify what are the gaps, what are the contradictions, and therefore, in discussion with your team members, in discussion with your guide, in discussion with the director of the research lab, depending on the context within which you're working, you would come up with an early draft of a research purpose and have some hypotheses or at least objectives to guide the next steps of your research process. And your review of literature then becomes more specific. Um, at this juncture, you may even begin to write an outline for your research literature review and begin to have an early draft. Uh, Definitely, when you have formulated your research proposal, your literature review should have been done extensively well. Uh, but when you have finished your research proposal, does it mean that you are done with your literature review? Absolutely not. Because as you uh, uh, as you know that literature will need to be cited not just in the first part of your research, but even later when you have your findings, you will need to depend on a literature review to interpret the significance of your findings, not the statistical significance, that would depend on the use of statistical methods, but what is the value of your research findings. Again, you will need to engage in literature. So, and what if you have already published your paper? Do you stop looking at new literature? Definitely not, because there could be new research that makes you requalify the interpretation of a research that you have already concluded. So engaging with the research literature, if you wish to be an academician, you wish to be a researcher, you wish to be a teacher, you definitely need to be engaging with literature non-stop, ongoingly. Let's continue here. The most important purpose of the literature review is, how does your research fit into the existing body of knowledge, and how does it contribute to the existing body of knowledge? How does it extend it? Okay, so there's a how does it fit and how does it extend it? So these are two most important reasons for your literature review. Hmm? And in existing body of knowledge, the vocabulary can also be extant literature. Okay, so this is a important vocabulary. When we talk of existing body of knowledge, we talk of extant literature. Okay, continuing the continuing with the most important purpose of the literature review, it communicates the novelty and need of your study. Okay, so let me see. So, and I'm about to show you some examples. So communicates the rationale, scholarly argument in support of the study. It's the justification of the importance of the study. And more, please note that in the most reputed research literature, the rationale does not sit in a separate section. The rationale is an integrated feature of the literature review. Every single sentence in the literature review, when you are citing a particular research study, every single sentence contributes to informing the reader, informing the funder, informing the referee what is the need of this study. So continuing with the same subtopic, most important purpose of the literature review. Your literature review, every single sentence in the literature review communicates why you need the study. It also clarifies how your study fits into and extends relevant theory, research, method, which could be model, technique, practice, and policy. Okay, now you may not be extending all of this. It could be one, it could be two of this, but definitely you need, in your literature review, it should be very clear how your study fits into and extends either or either, I mean, or and theory, I repeat, theory, research, method, practice, policy. Other functions of the literature review, okay, clarity, you provide the reader, you provide the referee, you provide the funder, clarity about the key variables selected for the research. What is the consensus about the key variables selected for the research? So what is the clarity consensus about the role of the key variables in your research? So what are the differences, comparisons between how you are conceptualizing your key variables and what is in the literature? What are the relationships that you are proposing between the key variables in your research? How does that differ from the relationships that are already studied in the literature? What are the, if you have an intervention model, then what is, how are the key variables fitting, I mean, how are the key variables playing a role in the interventions that you have designed? Now, what I may do is, let me see, would you prefer that I show some examples right away, or I can show them at the end before I complete? What would your preference be?
Ma'am, you can show it simultaneously so that we can connect.
Okay. Okay, then I will need to end this show and I have them ready in my PDF. Okay, so I will. So here is a scholar who's very renowned, Bluestein, David Bluestein. Now, this is, he has come up with the psychology of working, a new framework for counseling practice and public policy. So I just want to show that in the review of literature, hmm, um, every sentence practically will be making a point of what is the need. Okay, so you just have a look at the first. Is the font size visible, or do I increase
Ma'am,
it?
if you can increase a bit.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. I will do so. 1 minute. Yeah, that's better, I think. Right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, I will increase it further. Okay, so now, so here, um, see here, the psychology of working perspective was developed in response to a clear need within XYZ field to address the lives of those who traditionally have been ignored or forgotten. So What you need to focus on here is that every sentence is bringing the need of the study into the foreground. Again, if we look at this sentence, okay, let me not rush here. So you have the psychology of working perspective was developed in response to a clear need within the field of career counseling to address the lives of those who traditionally have been ignored or forgotten because of their social class or as a result of racism and other forms of social oppression, which includes disability status, sexual orientation, immigration status, age, gender, poverty, and or lack of access to material and social resources and opportunities. Now, although significant theoretical and research efforts have provided us, I'm skipping ahead, with a rich, dynamic, and insightful understanding of career-related processes and experiences, our field lacks a means for an in-depth exploration of the lives of those for whom work serves more as a means of survival rather than expression of talents and personality. So in this first paragraph, you will notice that the literature review strongly is a scholarly argument in support of the here the contribution is a theoretical contribution. Okay, so um, let me just see now. So here, if we okay, so promote career. So here is again the need of this extension of theory, promote career development for the full range of workers and potential workers around the globe. Hmm? I will share another, 1 second. Let me increase. Let me show, this is one of my early publications way back in 1990, which is on the emergence of social dominance in young boys play groups. Okay, so here this review of literature and discussion sections of the paper were written by me, and my guide wrote the method and results. So this is here is there's literature being cited. I will be sharing about that format, which varies from discipline to discipline, a little later. So recognition of the role of the peer group in children's social development and subsequent adjustment has led to the study of organizational features of children's groups. So this is a broad statement introducing the topic because the research paper is on social dominance in children's playgroups, social dominance hierarchies. I'm just showing you that while literature is being cited, in the first paragraph itself, there is a sentence here where you can see what is the need of this paper or this research. So, however, the types of social interactions giving rise to these different structures vary, and the nature of linkage between dominance and sociometric status is not yet well understood. So the novel contribution in this paper was dominance hierarchies had been studied by different scholars, and sociometric status, that is popularity measurement, whether the child is considered popular, the child is considered, using ratings, you identify whether children are popular, neglected, rejected, or controversial. Now, sociometric assessment, which is a feature of um, social organization, had been studied by different scholars, and dominance hierarchies had been studied by different scholars. And in this research, we brought two disparate threads of literature together. So the dominance hierarchy literature was separate, The sociometric status literature was separate, and in our research, we studied the interrelationship between dominance hierarchies and sociometric status. Uh, both, both are ways of studying social organization in human groups. Our focus was on children, but both are to do with human groups, social organization in human groups. And the novelty of the research, the gap that was being addressed, is immediately within the first paragraph itself. As I was sharing, the literature review, very importantly, is a logical argument in favor of your research. So let us see some other aspects. So here, by the way, as I told you, clarity about key variables. So you will notice here some what is a dominance hierarchy is being clarified in this paragraph. Okay. So asymmetries lead to the formation of a power structure at the level of the group called a dominance hierarchy. All right. Okay. And the literature which shows that dominance interactions uh, were correlated with adult ratings of aggressiveness, activity, and sociability. All right. Um, so then going ahead here, other gaps in the literature. So most researchers have derived dominance hierarchies from dyadic measures involving episodes of social conflict, but they have not been uniform in selecting the precise behaviors and context. As you will see in my presentation further, I will be sharing with you that the gaps in the literature, the errors, what is missing is all very much part of the literature review. One mistake that beginning scholars make is they think the literature review is to tell the reader how much we know about the subject. It's not about how much you know about the subject. Every single sentence has to contribute to building clarity about what your research is about and why is it needed. So I repeat, what is your research about and why is it needed? Okay. Otherwise, all right, let's have a look here. Here is again identifying a gap. Given that aggression may play an important role in defining social organization in children's group, we may ask questions about the relations among aggression, dominance, and sociometric preference, both at the group level and individual level. I will share this was an early paper that I published as a PhD scholar. So I was a PhD scholar when I published this paper. And as I have been informed that most of the participants are PhD scholars, I thought of sharing what I had written as a PhD scholar. Uh, I will now share a paper which I have published in December 2022 in the British Journal of Guidance and Counseling, now with my doctoral student and um, SRF, Senior Research Fellow, Brenda Fernando. So here the paper is entitled Intersectionality of Rural Community, Geography and Gender in the, one second, I'll just reduce. Yeah, okay. So intersectionality, so this is a very recent paper, December 2022. Intersectionality of rural community, geography and gender in the careers of young adults. So here I want to show you um, multiple features. Right, there's an introduction that we have written to the literature review, and where we have used a verbatim response from one of our participants. Okay. Um, all right. So the young adult male, in his words, it's I want to pursue my career in the Kollywood film industry. So I'm just skipping ahead, but I'm forced to stay in the merchant navy field to pay for my sister's wedding dowry. And okay, now we have used this verbatim response to introduce our literature review and introduce our research paper. So we have continued. This is the unheard voice of a 32-year-old young man, a sailor from a rural area who is constrained from exploring career options that do not align with the geographical community endorsed occupations for his gender. So notice that right in this first sentence, we have it is connected to the title of the research, which is intersectionality of rural community, geography, and gender. Okay, so here in the introduction, I must tell you that uh, scientific writing is signposted. What do I mean by signpost? You are told again and again where you are, just like you have signposts on the you have you are Juhu this way and Kandavli that way and so on. Are you have the for directions and for location. Likewise, in scientific writing, I call it signposted. So you have to the clearer the reader can the clearer manner in which the reader can comprehend and understand um, the content, the better the quality. And explicit statements are needed. All right. So now let's have a look here in this paper. So, all right. In this paper, we wish to draw attention to the interconnected roles of a rural community, which is what is social geography, coastal geography pertaining that is to physical geography, and gender in career choices among young adults from 2 districts in South India. Now, again, look here. Here is again the gap. So career research is limited with regard to rural populations as well as the role of geography in shaping careers. Gender, as it pertains specifically to rural careers, also needs attention. Now, this review of literature is organized. So geography and career development is one of the subheadings. Um, all right. Okay. So uh, every single sentence has to contribute to the value of the study. So look here, Patton and McMahon 2006 have contended that the influence of factors such as geographic location is likely to be extensive in career development. Then Reed and Westergaard, in a study of coastal towns in the UK, emphasized the negative impact of geographic location on young people's opportunity structures. So it's not that you're just telling that you know about Reed and Westergaard. What is Reed and Westergaard to do with your study? So here, because this study is redressing a gap in the literature where geography and careers have been understudied, the Patton and McMahon have made a conceptual statement which is being cited. Then Reed and Westergaard, who have emphasized the negative impact of geographic location on young people's opportunity structures. Then similarly, Bakshi noted that Norwegian youth's career development in rural areas was affected by sparse population and infrastructural challenges. But very importantly, again, look here. On the whole, however, geography has not been given its due place in Career Theory, Research and Practice, and Alexander and Hooley 2018 are being cited. You will notice in a later point in my presentation that it is important to cite recent references, and it's not an essay that you write with your creativity. You have to, every sentence has to be supported with extant literature, that is existing literature. I will come back to more of this later. Let me right now go back to my presentation. I hope many things are becoming clearer. Now, one second. Where are we? So I will go back here. So I hope that everyone has understood that the rationale in most highly reputed research journals, rationale does not sit on in a separate compartment. The every single sentence in the literature review informs the reader about what is this study about and why is it needed. So the rationale is not a separate feature of the lit review or ROL. It is an integrated feature of the literature review. Okay, so let's continue. This I think I have shared already. So this I have shared. So let's now switching topics slightly within the ROL. So sourcing literature for the ROL is my next subtopic. So what are the types of literature to be sourced? So let's have a look. First, let's look at the types of papers that you would be sourcing to for your literature review. So you could have a theory paper. So the Bluestein paper that I showed you is a theory paper because that paper is written to extend theory. So David Bluestein and colleagues, all right. Actually, he has a German name. It should be Bluestein, but I have met him and he prefers to anglicize his name as Bluestein. So with God's grace, I've been able to connect on an international level, not just during my PhD, but otherwise also with scholars worldwide. Now, Bluestein paper, the reason I have selected it, it is an example of a theory paper. So that he identified a gap in the literature, that Western theoretical approaches were focused uh, in career development, were focused on vocational preference theory, etc., where an individual has a preference and therefore goes for a particular field. But that is not necessarily what is congruent with the experiences of diverse human beings, diverse individuals, and diverse communities where um, survival, livelihood, earning a livelihood may be a higher concern than chasing interests and vocational preferences. So he has extended theory and he has formulated the psychology of working theory. So that was a theory paper. Research paper, I showed you just a couple of research paper. The dominance hierarchy and sociometric paper was sociometric assessment. That was a research paper, as well as the intersectionality of community, geography, and gender, which was also a research paper. Sometimes the journal may have a brief research report, which means it's a research paper, but it is given the page budget for a brief research report is much smaller, and therefore the brief research report will be encapsulating the uh, research findings. Okay, the research paper would be a lengthier paper than the brief research report. Then you have a conceptual review paper. So review papers, by the way, review papers are enormously useful for when you're writing your research, um, when you're writing your literature review. And there are two types of review papers. There are conceptual review papers, which are qualitative. Qualitatively, the authors organize the extant literature using conceptual organization, which is novel. Hmm? And they come up with this. They come up with this a wonderful summary of the extant literature in the field. Hmm? Then you have a meta-analytical, which is also known as a quantitative review paper. So I'm not sure whether everyone here knows what is a meta-analysis. So I think I will share what is a meta-analysis. All right. And I do have examples of each of these. Theory paper, research paper, I've already shown you examples. And I will show you examples of a conceptual review paper and a meta-analytic review paper as well. So a review paper is not a research paper. It summarizes the extant literature, especially the qualitative review paper, which is also known as a conceptual review paper. But the meta-analytic or the quantitative review paper is a research paper simultaneously. What in a meta-analysis? So suppose the meta-analysis is, I have come across a meta-analysis, say for uh, the child, suppose it's postmenopausal women, and that's the topic, postmenopause. So there will be a criteria for selection of the study into the meta-analytic review paper. All right. And every paper that qualifies using the inclusion exclusion criteria will become one case in the research. So and the data of each, the suppose the mean, we take, suppose we are talking of postmenopausal women, then uh, maybe 15 studies have met the your inclusion exclusion criteria, and these 15 studies now are going to be your sample size will be 15 for the meta analysis. Now, age of the women in each of these studies, the mean age of study 1, of the women in study 1, then the mean age in study 2, like that you will have 15 values for age, and you compute the mean of the 15 values. So in meta-analytic review paper, you will have uh, uh, analysis, quantitative analysis. So it is simultaneous. It is known as a quantitative review paper. And definitely the meta-analytic review papers and conceptual review papers are critical for your literature review. You should go out of your way. You should actually Google meta-analysis and your key variables, because in a meta-analysis or in a conceptual review paper, the extant body of knowledge relevant to your topic is summarized for you. So the gaps are also identified by those authors, which you can integrate without plagiarism. I repeat, which you can integrate without plagiarism into your own literature review. So I think I will right now just close this, and I will just 1 second. Where is one? I'll just 1 second close my camera. But with that, if I close my camera, I think that is only this. 1 second. I will stop sharing and just give me a minute. Now, okay. Dr. Megha, have I stopped sharing the screen?
Yes,
Doc
ma'am. Yes,
okay,
doctor.
just give me a minute. I want to share excellent meta-analysis, and which is right here with me. Um, hmm. So Let me see. 1 minute. Now, 1 second. Or 1 second. So, where if I kept that meta-analysis? 1 second. Hmm. 1 minute. I had several on my. Where is it now? Gone. 1 second. Hmm. So, 1 minute. I think it is. So let me see. 1 second. I will. 1 second. So, and in the meanwhile, I hope everyone is very clear about the. So, I'm going to first show. I'm going to first show a conceptual review paper. Okay, so let me share screen. I'm going to show a conceptual review paper. Where's this screen gone? So share screen and desktop. Okay, allow. Right. 1 second. So I need to show this. 1 minute. Close this. Where is it gone? Okay, 1 minute. Where are you? There. Wait, here. So is this now this is a paper, all right, by I'm showing you by Indian scholars, and then I will show another one with by Western scholars. So this is from Christ University paper that I have. I until recently I was one of the two chief editors of this journal. I'm now a consulting editor. So because my work is a lot. Okay, so here is a paper which was published uh, recently, earlier this year, Gratitude as a Path to Human Prosperity During Adverse Circumstances. So as it is stated, it's a narrative review. So it's a qualitative review paper. So there's a background, there's a significance of the review. So in the review, the literature on the benefits of gratitude has been um, summarized. Okay, so there's a whole section. So in case you happen to be a scholar who was interested in what's it in gratitude, this would be an excellent paper to look at, because benefits of gratitude have been summarized in this narrative review. Further, you will see then um, Gratitude, a path to human prosperity during adverse circumstances. This paper is part a narrative review, but there is also a contribution, a theoretical contribution that the paper makes. So now gratitude in the context of adverse circumstances, that literature has been summarized. Okay. All right. Including theory. So Watkins amplification theory. Is this visible? I hope to all. Dr. Mega, is it visible? Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay, okay, okay. Now, then Lazarus and Folkman's transactional theory of stress and coping, including the research. All right. Research has demonstrated the predominant role of positive emotions in stress and coping mechanisms. Um, so this is a narrative review. Then they, all right. So uh, this is a table that they have, which is a which is a, creative contribution, a theoretical contribution of this paper. So distinguishing characteristics and assets. Um, okay, this is the unique characteristics, mechanisms, and effects of gratitude that serve uh, to create well-being during adverse or trying circumstances. So what are the distinguishing characteristics and assets? All right, I'm closing this 1 second. Um, and this is again the figure that they have come up with, which is again a creative contribution made by the authors in this narrative review. So frequent experiences and greater levels of gratitude in a person lead, which is all based on the literature that they have summarized, enables creative and flexible thinking, appropriate appraisal, positive emotions, strengthens the person to endure, and finally the person experiences growth and abundance. So this is, and then the conclusion. I'm also uh, going to share, oops, 1 second, where have I, 1 minute. I'm also going to share um, uh, okay, another paper, gratitude paper, which is a which is a conceptual paper. Here, gratitude, the state of art. Let me show you that one as well. Okay, so you have here in this paper, this is by Western scholars. This is now these names are a little difficult, but it's a paper from Portugal. So you have an introduction, and the purpose of the conceptual review is stated here. The purpose of this article is to clarify key definitions of gratitude, identify main characteristics of the concept, provide an overview of gratitude measures, practices, and research, serving as a precursor to a systematic review. Systematic review is where you're using quantitative methods. Now, that is like a meta-analysis is a systematic review, and identifying some knowledge gaps which could be addressed in further gratitude studies. So the first part of the review focuses on the complexity of the concept, followed by a wide range of existing measures and studies. Okay, so look at this first section is on defining gratitude and all the various approaches to defining gratitude. Then the next topic is in this conceptual review is on reciprocity and gratitude. All right. So, all right. Then you have gratitude, indebtedness, and forgiveness. Then you go to, then the next main section is on gratitude measures. Then the research findings relating to gratitude. which include gratitude, socio-demographic factors, and personality. All these research studies, then gratitude and optimal functioning, gratitude interventions, and conclusion, new directions for future research. So you can see here, all right, that these are two examples of conceptual review papers or narrative review papers where there is no quantitative analysis, but it is exceedingly uh, useful when you are formulating your literature review. It is, or even at an earlier stage when you're working through your research proposal, it's excellent to look at conceptual review papers. So I think that everyone now understands conceptual review papers, and I will um, just see, 1 second. I will just need to close the share one minute. Just a minute, while I will show you. Now I will show you a meta-analysis. Just give me a minute. Okay. So now I have opened one. I will just share my, I'm just going to share my screen. So this, let me share screen. Right. 1 minute. Where is it gone? Yeah. Okay. So here, is everyone able to see? So this is a paper from Germany. And is everyone able to see?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So this is fertility and women's employment, a meta-analysis. And all right. So um, now what they have done is, let's see. So let's have a look here. So they have an introduction. Um, so the objective of their paper was to systematize the existing literature on the relation between women's employment and fertility. So as I've already shared vocabulary with you, a systematic literature review is another, is where we do a quantitative analysis, and it's a meta-analysis. So here when they are clarifying that instead of using a narrative literature review or a conceptual literature review, these are narrative literature review, conceptual literature review. This is all vocabulary, please, very important for you. Um, a systematic literature review, on the other hand, is a where you do quantitative analysis and you do use meta-analytic techniques, and there's a whole body of statistical knowledge pertaining to meta-analytic methods. But I'm not asking you to do your research as a meta-analysis. What is very important is when you are sourcing literature for your literature review, conceptual or narrative literature reviews and meta-analytic literature reviews are exceedingly important. Now, all right. So here in this paper, you have a definition of what is an clarification of a narrative versus a systematic or meta-analytic review. So a standard literature review, which is a commentary of findings of previous work, is qualitative in character and does not allow for a quantitative assessment. And but in a meta-analysis is a quantitative literature review. Okay, so It is a technique which has been developed to synthesize, combine, and interpret the abundance of empirical evidence on a certain topic, as you can see here. Hmm? So it offers a clear and systematic way to compare the results of different studies, and the criteria may differ. This in this particular paper, they looked at country, method, control variable, and sample. So they looked at, in this paper, they looked at two effects: the impact of women's employment on childbearing and effect of young children on mothers' entry into employment. They looked at Europe, US, Canada, and Australia. Okay, so this is the, then they have given a theoretical framework on the changing correlation between fertility and women's work. Meta-analysis. All right. Um, so yeah, effect sizes are recomputed and so on and so forth. um, there's a lot of justification for using a meta-analysis here. All right. In a meta-analysis, there will be an inclusion-exclusion criteria for selection of which studies will be quantitatively and systematically um, analyzed. All right. So here they have mentioned the transition to employment, how many studies they took from which countries. All right. So for unemployment, they had 3 studies, one from France, one from Finland, one from Denmark, and so on and so forth. For the second part of their study, which was transition to childbirth, the 53 studies for the first parity with the pregnancy for the first, transition to childbirth first time, then second time, third time, and so on. The if the techniques that they applied, how did they compute the effect sizes, uh, and so on. By the way, like I told you, there's an entire body of statistical knowledge uh, pertaining to meta-analytic methods. Here are the results that they have. Um, all right. So they have used Epsing-Anderson welfare regime typology, which includes conservative, familialistic, liberal, post-socialist, socialist, social democratic, and in parentheses are the effect sizes. So I will now go back. I will close this right now. Okay, so I'm closing this. I'm just going back here. I will just stop share for a minute while I go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so I will go back. Okay, so I hope everyone is absolutely clear about the need to include theory papers, a great need to include research papers, and the conceptual review paper or a narrative review paper, the meta-analytic quantitative review paper, also known as a systematic review paper, a position paper. Now, looking at the time, I'm going to continue. Position paper is one where the authors are declaring their position with regard to an issue in the field. And the whole paper will be outlining a particular position. Um, Practice papers, all right. So if um, if your research is in the area of education, it could be an educational practice on classroom methods, teaching learning methods. If you're in mental health field, it could be a practice paper where a new counseling technique is being described. A practice paper could simultaneously be a research paper if it is where research has been conducted on the use of that practice, or it could just be a simple description of practice. A policy paper, uh, all right, where the whole uh, the paper itself is on policy. Uh, if I can show practice and policy papers, if we have time, Dr. Megha, should I stop and show those papers or continue, or show it at the end?
Maybe at the end, because that changing of screen takes time, no, ma'am?
Yes, yes. Okay, okay, fine. Is someone else also saying something? No, no. Okay. All right. Let us then interviews. I will just take note that I'll show you these papers. Yeah, at the end. Yeah, because changing screen takes time in this. I am more accustomed to Zoom. Okay, so I will show you paper examples of practice, policy, and interview papers as well, which are very useful. Then, of course, when you're sourcing literature for your ROL, you can have a look at dissertations and theses. They are very useful. Then you have government reports or reports or by recognized bodies such as United Nations, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and the like. Okay. Then you have chapters in books and books themselves. But please note that the ROL largely has to come from papers and not from textbooks. So if you are that the quality, because you remember the purpose of a literature review is to answer the questions: how does your research fit into the existing body of knowledge, and how does it extend it? So if you are not depending on, if the bulk of your literature review is not about research, okay, then you are unable to satisfy the purpose of a literature review. So another error that beginning scholars can make is that the bulk of the material contributing to their literature review is coming from books or chapters in books. Chapters in books and chapters in books are useful. They should be used. I have put them here, but look at where I've not put them first. Papers have to be, because the cutting edge knowledge in the field will be in the research papers. There's a time lag between books and research. So books, uh, the research papers capture the latest findings, and your research has to fit into that existing body of knowledge. Chapters and books come as a second step. So there's a time lag between a research publication and a chapter publication. I hope that it is clear to you, and everyone understands that I am repeating myself for emphasis that the bulk of the material for your literature review should come from research papers and narrative review papers, meta-analyses, and other types of papers rather than books. But you definitely can look at books. uh, Books are very good, and looking for, when you're identifying your interests and what areas of uh, and subtopics you're interested in, they're also useful for understanding what is the organization of the body of knowledge in that field, because you can look at the table of contents and brief, and there are three things you can look at in the book other than what you are accustomed to looking at: the brief table of contents in a book, the then the detailed table of contents in a book, and the subject index. Very important, the subject index at the back of the book, other than the chapter that you may have read, etc. So it is useful, but it should not form the bulk of what you are writing in your literature review. But it is very useful for understanding the organization of ideas relating to your topic. Newspaper articles, I've put in parentheses, sometimes useful, but definitely by no means it should be the bulk of your literature review, cannot be from newspaper articles. Okay, sure, you can, for something that made the headline in a particular time period, you could be using that headline in your literature review, but that is a minimal part of your literature review. Abstracts, again in parentheses, kindly note that for writing your literature review, you should not have maybe one or two abstracts, but you can't write the literature review only using abstracts. You have to have read the paper. Okay. Um, so I will show you some of the examples in some time, but otherwise, I hope that the types of literature to be sourced is clear from here. Shall I go ahead then?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So here is a question. Bulk of the literature in the ROL should pertain to. All right. Anybody wants to raise their hand and answer this question? Is there anyone wanting to answer this question? Nobody? Any
Yes. Gauri Pimple, I
yes,
will
yes.
permit you. You can yeah, you can unmute yourself, Gauri.
Yes, hello.
Yes,
Yeah.
please go ahead, Gauri.
Yes, answer is research papers.
Yes, very good. It is very good, Gauri. That's excellent. All right. So the bulk of the literature in the ROL should pertain to research literature. Okay. All right. So research papers, narrative reviews, which are summarizing research papers in a qualitative manner, meta-analyses or systematic reviews which are summarizing the research literature in quantitative ways, that should be forming the bulk of your research literature. Next most represented is theory or theoretical orientation and incidence or prevalence data where applicable. Okay, going ahead then, selecting literature for the ROL. So I have some, oops, one second. Now, which literature to select? So very importantly, I repeat, the literature review is not for you to tell the reader, हाँ देखो मैंने कितना पढ़ा इतनी okay, it's not for you to tell them how much you have read. It has to be very relevant to your topic and the precise topic. Then the publication dates of reference literature. Classic studies can be outdated. Okay, doesn't matter, classic studies can be from the last century. A classic study could even be there from the 19th century. But other than classic studies, please remember, other than classic studies, you should stay within the last 10 years max. Yeah. But so the literature you should be looking at, classic studies, you can go back to older times and go back to decades earlier if it is turning point literature, for example. Otherwise, you should be looking at literature which has been published in the last 10 years. Now, what is the source? Kindly note that I had some once uh, I had a student who was I was the referee for the dissertation, the viva, dissertation viva. The student was studying marriage, and she was studying wedding, getting engaged and engaged couples. Okay, and she was citing information from a wedding planner website. So I'm sorry, if you are studying parenting, marriage, you could be studying even finance or whatever. there will always be popular sites, but you cannot be citing literature from popular sites. The source has to be scientific and academic. It cannot be from a popular site. So I am it, all right. Then secondary and primary literature. So I showed you Bluestein's Psychology of Working paper, where he has proposed a new theory. All right. Further, there is, if I cite Bluestein, so the first obviously is primary literature, where Bluestein describes his theory himself. Or if if there is Patel and Shetty, who have written a paper on drug use amongst adolescents, if they are their own paper will be the primary literature. But if okay, if Mehta describes Patel and Shetty's research, that becomes secondary literature. Or if I cite Bluestein, that becomes secondary literature. Obviously, the bulk of your ROL should come from primary literature and not from secondary literature. When you find something interesting in a particular paper, you have a reference list there. You need to go to the original source and read the primary literature as far as possible. Okay. Then very important, another point is quality of literature. By the way, because there is a need for academics to publish papers for career advancement across the world, this is not only in India. In fact, it is more so in industrially advanced countries. When I was completing my PhD there, I mean, the motto was in India also now for career advancement, you need to publish papers. And there are many, um, many uh, journals in published literature the most glaring errors ever. Um, okay, so in statistical interpretation, in the use of statistics, in the interpretation of findings, I'm not talking of grammar, I'm talking of cardinal errors. So you have to be very careful that you're looking at literature which is quality literature. I tell my students, to source literature from the best publishers in the world. And if it is not from the best publishers, at least check the quality of the paper before ingesting it into your literature review. Okay, so I hope this slide is also making sense. All right, and I go ahead now. One of the frequently asked questions that I have come across from students is, oh, my topic has not been studied much. There's no literature to cite. What shall I do? There's nothing I can write in my literature review. My dears, all right, my dear colleagues and fellow scholars, there is no such topic that has not been studied at all. So I'll give you an example. So I once had a student, she was studying perfume and how the use of perfume on clothes degrades the fabric. So she said, oh, ma'am, this has never been studied. So I said, what has not been studied? Perfume and its impact on degrading the fabric. So I said, but has fabric degradation been studied? Oh, yes, ma'am. So I said, that's exactly what you have to do. You are interested, your outcome variable is on the degradation of the fabric. All right. That has been studied in many, many um, whether it is because of wash cycles, whether it is because of perspiration, because of rubbing and friction, because of so there are many aspects of fabric degradation that have been studied. You have to summarize that literature and say, hello, perfume is something that is missing from this literature. That's the whole point of your review of literature, to say, how does your study fit into the existing body of knowledge? So fabric degradation has been studied in XYZ ways, but hello, perfume has not been studied as a cause of fabric degradation, and this is the novel contribution of the study. So that's exactly the role of an ROL. Uh, Another way to write such a review of literature would be, what are the research studies done with fabric degradation? What are the research studies done with perfume? But the two together have not been studied. So that is, again, you you address the gap in the literature. So now somebody may say, oh, there's such a surfeit, there's such an abundance of literature in my field. What shall I say are the gaps? There too, my dear, you have to be making a clever argument. You have to say, this is such an important topic that it has been studied extensively. But when something is studied extensively, we never have 100% clarity in the findings. There will always be contradictions. There will always be some incompatible findings. So you have to address that in your review of literature. Or it could be that one other error that beginning scholars make is, they just combine Indian, non-Indian literature. Because the aspect has been extensively studied outside India, it seems there's no need for this study. Why is it being done? But when you separate the Indian and non-Indian, you're able to see that, yes, this study is needed because all the literature is from outside and is located in a different cultural context. So going ahead now, now how to locate literature for the ROL. So there are three types of literature that I want to bring to your attention. There is free access literature, there is open access literature, and there is paid access literature. Um, Free access literature is literature which, for a short period of time, the publisher makes free access in order to promote reading or consumption of literature in a particular field. Okay, here in reputed journals, a free access paper, the authors have not paid the publisher, and the free access is for a limited duration. Open access literature, on the other hand, refers to papers in reputed journals where the authors have paid the publisher a large sum of money. I'm not talking of the predatory journals which are of low quality. The best academic publishers also have the open access option. All right. So let me see. All right, in the open access option, the authors have paid the publisher at the time of publishing a large sum of money, such that the paper becomes available to readers without cost. A paid access literature is where the paper has been the paper is published in a reputed journal. The authors have not paid the publisher for open access, and the publisher charges the readers for accessing the paper. Notice that all reputed journals of all reputed academic publishers in the world have free access, open access, and paid access papers within the same journal. there are also some journals which are open access journals, and every paper is open access because every paper in that journal, these are highly reputed journals I'm talking about. I once again repeat, I'm not talking of the predatory journals which UGC has said we must not publish in. I'm talking of highly reputed publishers here. So OA journals are where every paper is an open access paper. In order to publish in an OA journal, you have to have paid for the publication, and the cost is considerably high in reputed journals. But as a consumer, for example, Frontiers is a publisher. They have open access journals uh, in various fields, and they are very high quality. I think without closing, I think I can show 1 minute. Uh, 1 minute. Let me see here. I will just show. Um, 1 second. Let me see, because I don't want to have a pile up at the end. Now I'll just show you for the journal where I am um, um, consulting editor right now, where I was one of the two chief editors. So I'm right now. Oh, I am. Uh, okay, let me sign out, because if now, uh, because otherwise everything will be showing as free access because I have access to the journal. So now, okay, let us go to the journal. All right. So, yeah, now you will notice here that let's look at so there are open access papers. All right. These are papers where the authors have paid to allow access. So they have paid. So British Journal of Guidance and Counseling, which is a Routledge, Taylor and Francis journal, Scopus and Web of Science recognized with an okay. So they have open access, but they also, if we look at, we will look at, I will show you volume 50, 1 second, and the Asia Symposium, which I edited. So the editorial is free access, which shows through green. Then these are all paid access. These are paid access. And there is one open access paper in this issue, which was a place of culture in the training of career guidance educators. So here is a journal which, like many other journals, of one of the most highly reputed academic publishers, where you will have free access. This is free access. You have open access, which is this, and the rest are paid access. You also, I will show you Frontiers, which is an open access journal. Um, all right, Frontiers. So you have Frontiers. So this is Frontiers in psychology, but you have Frontiers in all different kinds of. So you have, this is a highly reputed journal. So now here, every single paper will be open access, because it's an open access journal. Okay. So they have, um, okay, so every paper will be available. So suppose we look at volume opening up. Let me close some of these. So now every single paper will be open access. Okay. So all right. So anyway, I'm going back here. Um, so you have also, please note that your university, your research center, your department could have subscribed to for some service where you are able to access paid access literature without charge. And InflibNet and all those options exist. You can also go through databases like PubMed and like PubMed. One second, I have in commerce. I came to know that most of you are possibly from commerce backgrounds. You have Business Source Complete, which is has 10,000 scholarly business journals, academic search, and so on. You have your own databases. Going back here, you have PubMed and or which has so many papers which are open access. You can also have depository, academia and researchgate. You can become members of, take the free membership, and uh, oops, sorry. um, and many of the papers, some scholars have put up free access in researchgate or academia, or you have to request access to it through researchgate and academia. That is also very useful. Then and I hope that everyone, just one second, everyone understands that. 1 minute, I just want to show this. Okay, I just want to show you that, suppose like looking at, I'm sure that you understand, but if we open PubMed, all right. Okay, and suppose you type in something of your interest. So suppose, let me see, if I type, suppose I type child aggression, okay, and search. Okay, so you know that it has yielded 4,166. All right, and it tells me whether it is a review paper. All right, and whether it's a research paper, and it also shows whether it's a free PMC article. So this is very useful. Now suppose if I click here, all right, which this is a free PMC article where I can click and get that whole paper. All right, but also please note that every paper on PubMed, as on journal sites, you will have a list of similar articles. Okay, which you can, then you have another cited by. Okay, here itself, if this was an area of interest, in similar articles, again, I found a free one, and cited by, again, there are so many free ones. All right. And it has been, you can see all cited by, you can see all similar ones. Then also very, very important is this site. Okay, so for your reference list, okay, you don't need, for your reference list, you don't need to write it from scratch. Okay, this is the NLM format. For example, I use APA. Here is the APA format. I just click copy and paste. That's it. So okay, this is also very important. So I've used the PubMed to demonstrate to you that you can type and you will get a whole list of researches and review papers, which will be in thousands. Some of them will be free access, but for every paper, you will also get similar articles and cited by. And for every paper, you have the cite option, where you can take this format that you need and copy and paste it with minimal work. Likewise, of course, if you go to the journal sites also, all journals have a cite function where you can download the citation, that is the reference. Okay, now let me go back to my presentation, which is, where was I? I finished this, and this. Okay. And academia and ResearchGate also I can show, but right now I have informed you that uh, those are groups of scholars who take membership, and there is free membership and paid premier membership. I'm a free member of ResearchGate. I'm a free member of academia, and many papers which are not free otherwise are free on those sites, or you can request the authors. Even if you don't go through ResearchGate and academia, you can always email authors and request their papers. Now, content of the literature review: introduction, incidence, prevalence, demographic composition, gravity of the problem, extensiveness, theory or theoretical orientation, key concepts or variables, definitions, explanations, clarifications, correlates, relationships, comparisons, differences, key conclusions from the extant research literature, contradictions, limitations, recommendations, overlooked or neglected areas, gaps in the literature. So this is in a this is an overview of what you can include in your ROL or literature review. You will have an introduction, you will have the incidence or prevalence or demographic composition, the theory, theoretical orientation, key concepts or variables, including the correlates and relationships, key conclusions from the existing research literature, and very importantly, your literature review should be pointing out the at least some of it, that is contradictions, limitations, overlooked or neglected areas, gaps in the literature. Types of gaps we can focus on here. One is where something is missing in the literature. It is also, the vocabulary is lacuna singular, lacunae plural. So that particular topic or subtopic or variable or type of interrelationships between variables is missing in the literature. It could be missing overall, it could be missing at a global level, that is in the non-Indian literature as well, or it could be missing in the Indian literature. Then you could, contradictions are also a gap. Errors, there are errors in method, error in conceptualization in the existing body of literature. Limitations in the existing body of literature, something which was studied in a very narrow manner, it needs to be broadened. Something, all right, okay. Also, now types of novelty. The need and novelty, remember, are the focus of your literature review. What is the need of your research? What is the novelty of your research? Types of novelty that you could have clearly communicate, and your research would be on that, and it will be also captured in your literature review, would be, for example, new techniques. Maybe you're using a new statistical technique. So when I did my PhD analysis, I of course had a conceptual model which was new, but I also had a statistical model which was barely emerging at the time, which was moderator analysis. So maybe you're using a new statistical technique, maybe you're using a new measurement technique. You've come up with a new way to measure something. It could be the novelty in your research, which you're communicating through the gaps in the review of literature. It could be that you're coming up with a new model or a revised model. So it could be a new conceptual model, it could be a new measurement model, or it could be a new conceptual and measurement model. Some of the latest findings in areas of interest to me, for example, are using structural equation modeling, SEM. And in SEM now we are able to see, uh, you know, reciprocal influences across time. So these are some where the conceptual and measurement models have changed. You could have novelty, which you are clarifying through your literature of review. You have new variables, or you are putting variables which have not been put together. Now you're putting them together in for the first time, or your intervention could be new, or you could be studying something that has been studied in a new population or in a new subpopulation. For all of these types of novelty, you have to show what is the existing body of literature and why this technique is this technique is missing, or this measurement model is new, or these variables have not been put together in this manner before, or such and such interventions are designed, but this intervention is not designed, or it has been studied in XYZ context, but not in this particular subpopulation. All right, writing the literature review is my next section, which I focus on. So here, please remember to use an outline. This is not a creative essay where you just have free-flowing ideas. You can write your free-flowing ideas and simultaneously keep developing an outline and use an outline. As I have shared before, and as I repeat now, scientific writing is signposted. That means you tell the reader exactly what to understand and where is what to locate the reader in the uh, review of literature. You have to use a logically organized hierarchy of ideas. So I hope you got that. Then how to make an outline. So you can summarize each resource in, okay, all right. I have examples of summary sheets, which I can share in some time. Okay, so you can summarize each resource, for example, the reference, then the key aim, all right, the country in which it is located, the research, the key sample characteristics, mention the tools, and make a brief outline of the key findings. And any ideas that you get which are not in that paper, but they are sparked by that paper, I use a different color pen or a different color font size, different color font, or I write own idea and then write that as well. So for every resource, there will be a summary sheet. And then you begin in a linear and non-linear process of reading and note taking. Okay, so this is a linear and non-linear process of reading and note taking. So you're like in scientific reading is not like we read fiction. In fiction, you have to read from the first page to the last page. If you go to the last page first, you would lose the fun of reading that fiction. But in scientific writing, it is not a linear thing. You don't have to read from the first word to the last word. You can read the headings first. You can go to a paragraph that interests you most, then go back to earlier paragraphs to understand what does this paragraph actually communicate. So, and you're like an eagle. You get an overview, that means you're gliding. Then you swoop down, scan, and read something in detail. Okay, you do not have to be gullible and gobble up everything that you read. You have to read with a critical mind. Okay, and all this will help you. You keep making an outline and redefining and editing that outline ongoingly. Your reading will tell you, okay, you don't have enough literature in this area. Does it exist? Let me search for it, and so on. You have to be selective, focused. I've already shared this idea. Every sentence in the literature review has to make a point. Which point? What is your study about and why is it needed? Now, remember that you are not to throw information at the reader. Okay? every sentence has to make a point about what and why of the study. And Dr. Sasikaran, former director of the National Institute of Nutrition, had said this in one of his sessions. Don't start from the origin of mankind. So if you are extending the body of knowledge, you have to go to where you start, not from the start of that field. So that is very important. Don't start from scratch. So if the research is on fabric degradation, you have to summarize literature on what is the latest findings with regard to how fabric degrades. All right, it is not that you go to the first history of how fabric degradation came up as a concept, etc. Now here, what is the movement in the literature review? The movement in the literature review is from general to specific. It is from non-Indian to Indian. All right. Okay. Now, I've already shared that it is very important to distinguish between um, Indian and non-Indian research, because if you merge the two, it appears that everything is already known. So what is the point of this research? However, when you distinguish the context within which research has happened, okay, it's happened in XYZ context, it's not happened in a rural context, or it's not happened in an Indian rural context, then the research has value. Your literature review, I repeat, has to tell the reader, I'm telling you this for the 50th time, I'm sure, what is the need and novelty of your research. For that, it is very important to culturally locate your findings or to contextualize your findings, and non-Indian and Indian are two separate contexts. Avoid general universalistic statements unless you are sure that that is something that is a cross-cultural finding or a cross-context finding. Where possible, be culture specific. Should you be going study by study or writing conclusions across studies? If it is a very important seminal study, you can go keep the entire paragraph on that study, but otherwise a paragraph will have reference to more than one study. You can, as a student, have an appendix where you have made a tabular representation, which is study by study. But and sometimes, obviously, it is done for a narrative review, and definitely it is done for a quantitative review or a meta-analysis. Where possible, you do have to summarize conclusions across studies. Okay, I've already shared about tabular representation. Now, writing the literature review also means avoiding plagiarism. Plagiarism does not mean, that is, plagiarism is where you are stealing someone's idea. So you're like, typically what the student will tell me is, but ma'am, I have written the sentence. You may have written the sentence, but is the idea contribution yours, or is the idea already in the literature? If the idea is already in the literature, you need to cite the literature. You cannot be saying that I have written the sentence. Okay, so plagiarism can be deliberate, and you have chat GPT and all that right now. You have artificial intelligence that can also make things complex, but it is your conscience that you have to answer to. So plagiarism can be deliberate, but plagiarism frequently is unintended, but it is still plagiarism if that idea is not an idea which you have generated and contributed to human society. You need to cite and acknowledge whose idea it is. Okay, so I've already shared this. Referencing skills, you need to, I've shown you already that you can copy the reference, which will be under the word cite, from the databases, from the journal sites. You need to, and remember that the whole point of a literature review is that there is a consensual body of knowledge. That means there's a body of knowledge that a professional community agrees to, and that body of knowledge guides the work in that profession. So if you are not going to situate your research into the existing body of knowledge by acknowledging other people's contributions before yours, you obviously will plagiarize and you will not have met the purpose of a literature review, which is to fit your research into the existing body of knowledge. Paraphrasing skills, therefore, are very important here. Any sentence can be paraphrased. Students like, oh, but I can't write this in any other way. If it is a list, switch the order of the components in the list. Look at the synonyms and change the verb. Change the sentence construction. Paraphrasing is very much important. Now, in avoiding plagiarism, one of the things that I do is I find literature, I write and then I locate the evidence to support my statements. Okay, so you can find literature to support what you're saying. Sometimes when I come up with a very creative bent of words, I Google it to see that nobody else has come up with the same creative bent of words. Otherwise, I would have unknowingly plagiarized, which means inadvertently plagiarized. Now, quotations versus citations, when to quote, when to cite. Cite means you have paraphrased it, but you have acknowledged the source. Quote means you have taken it verbatim and you have acknowledged. Both require acknowledgement, but quotations either are block quotations or in parentheses with page numbers, and citations are not with quotation marks or blocked or page numbers. Now, quoting versus citing, what is the difference? I've already shared. How many words will qualify as a quotation? Even three, one of my chairs of my doctoral work informed me, she's a very key scholar in the field, Cheryl Bueller, 3 substantive words in the same order qualify as a quotation. Best practice is to minimize quotations. When to quote, if it's a famous person, Mahatma Gandhi, all right, Abdul Kalam, you have, or, Sigmund Freud, okay? Or a clever or catchy turn of phrase, or if it's a definition. These are when it would be good to quote. How to quote? Less than 42 words requires quotation marks and page numbers along with the name of the scholars and surnames and year of publication. 42 words or more require block quotations. We don't have time for exercise in 2 hours. Citing literature and paraphrasing, I've already shared. This I will go ahead with. You have citations in text and parenthetical. All right, and you can have numerical citations. I will just show this 1 second. I'm almost finishing, so I will show this citation in so in one of my publications here. So here, if you will notice, 1 second. So if you see the sentence, Patton and McMahon, that's how she pronounces her name, have contended. So here, this is called a in-text citation because Patton and McMahon's name is not in parentheses. Whereas when you see all these are in-text citations, Reed and Westergaard, Bakshi 2021. However, here, 1 second, when here, let's close connections to community and the place of residence are typical strengths of rural context. Shepherd 2005 is a parenthetical citation. Okay. Now you will notice here there's nothing quoted. There's nothing quoted except here there's a definition which is being quoted. Geography can be defined as the study of locational and spatial variation in both physical and human phenomena on Earth, Bala Subramaniam, 2014, page 1. So you can see this is a quotation. Otherwise, all of this has been paraphrased, however. You have, let me, okay. Now, going back. So I showed you, 1 minute, going back here. I showed you in-text citation versus parenthetical citation. Numerical citations are where there are journals which do not want the names of authors after the sentences. There's a number, and that number will correspond to a reference list. Okay. All right. And in all reputed journals, if you're looking at a soft copy, it is hyperlinked. So when you click on the number, it will take you to the reference list. Likewise, in the literature, in the even when it is a parenthetical citation with the surname and year, when you click on it, it takes you immediately to the reference list. Keeping up with your reference list simultaneously, you have to see the publication guidelines of your professional community and the style of references. If you're publishing a paper and you're writing the review of literature for that purpose, then you need to know what are the guidelines of that journal. Then resources for citation and reference styles. I've already shared this when I showed you that you can click on the word cite either on the journal website or on databases like PubMed. You can copy the reference details from online sources, as I already shown. Use of literature in other places in the research report. Literature is cited obviously not just in the review of literature, it is also cited in the method, because all the methods that you're using cannot have been devised by you. Most of the time you're using methods devised by others, including statistical methods, data analytic tools like SPSS or SAS, etc. Or you could be using, say, IPA, interpretive phenomenological analysis, and so on and so forth, where you need to cite literature. Literature is obviously cited in the discussion, because once you have your findings, how do those findings fit into the existing body of knowledge, and how do those findings extend the existing body of knowledge? That is the promise. The promise of that was in the literature review, and that promise has to be actualized in the discussion. Okay. Now, this is my final slide, and then I do need to show you a few papers, after which we can call it a day. Skills related to a literature review. So identifying literature, screening literature for quality and relevance. Reading comprehension in general is a skill needed for literature review. Scientific reading comprehension skills are needed. You need knowledge of the field, which you build as you're reading. It's not a linear process that you have to have knowledge first, complete knowledge, and then you begin reading. It's a non-linear process. As you are reading, your scientific reading comprehension skills increase, because you're building knowledge of the field. You also need knowledge of quantitative methods, which are statistical methods, and qualitative methods. You cannot say that you will wash your hands off that, because then you are a disempowered consumer of research. In order to be an empowered consumer of research, you need to have knowledge of quantitative methods and qualitative methods, because all research papers will either use quantitative or qualitative methods, or a combination of the two. You need general writing skills. You also need scientific writing skills, which particularly have to do with coherence, organization, synthesis, paraphrasing, avoiding deliberate or inadvertent plagiarism, and some creativity is involved, because your research should be extending the existing body of literature. Now, I'm wanting to show you the position policy papers. I will show you, 1 second, and then I will all right. So I will need to just a second. So now I will show you policy paper. Okay, so now I have so this was a major policy paper which I had handled as an editor. I will show you, which is an open access because it was funded by some government organization in the UK. So this was a policy paper. It is all right, democratization of well-being, stakeholder perspectives on policy priorities for improving national well-being through paid employment and adult learning. It was the context was UK policy. So this was an the entire paper is on policy. This is a policy paper. Let me just increase the, okay, so this is a policy paper. All right. I hope you can see in this. So dominant, this is approaches to understanding well-being in policy. Okay, not just not well-being in research. This is well-being in relation to policy. So you can see here, dominant approach to understanding well-being in relation to policy is derived from research in psychological sciences. Then in the UK, Office for National Statistics has monitored different aspects of well-being using four questions to assess life satisfaction, happiness, anxiety, and feelings that life is worthwhile, and so on. This is an entire policy paper. The UK policy context was another subheading, and so on and so forth. So this was a policy paper. Now I will show you. There are many practice papers. Let's see now. So here is a practice paper. Now, all right, ICT, the new frontier pushing the boundaries of careers practice. So this is a practice paper. I have wanting to show you, I've already showed you meta-analysis. I think that was it, or what was there any other paper that I needed to show you? Paper, 1 second. So interview, yes, I will show you an interview. I interviewed Ed Diener, who has died recently, but he was the happiness expert in the world. And this is an interview paper. Ed Diener at the time was alive. What a wonderful person whom I had the good fortune to interact with. He was the alumni distinguished professor of psychology emeritus at University of Illinois. And this was the interview that I conducted with him. So, which was conducted over email. So, but this interview has been cited in Web of Science and Scopus journals. So I thanked him for agreeing to be interviewed for our special issue on happiness and well-being. And I had said I've mulled over some questions for the interview. You have published so extensively and so impactfully that I do hope you do not find the questions overly basic. And I had sent him the questions, and then he had replied that they're great questions, but could easily take me a day or two to answer. And would it be possible just to give me a few of them to answer? So then one of the questions that I had posed to him, that you have dedicated a lifetime of effort in theorizing. So you have dedicated a lifetime of effort in theorizing about and researching well-being. Have there been any surprises along the way where you had an insight or came across a finding which you previously had not expected? So then he answered, and these answers were not in the literature. So even in the interview, it was possible to extend knowledge. So, all right. So, one of the big surprises he said was that the country where people live can make a huge difference. It is not just whether a person is rich or poor or educated or uneducated. All right. Policies. Uh, and another surprise for him was that although income matters quite a bit for life satisfaction, after a certain point of income, it no longer makes much of a difference. But so coming out of poverty is important for happiness, but going from well off to rich does not boost happiness that much. So these were all this even the interview generated new ideas. Okay, with this I will close the share and come to back here for any questions. We have now exceeded the time, so maybe we need to stop. I do not know. Uh, I,
We'll just see if anyone wants to ask any questions.
yes, surely, surely.
So participants, the platform is open. If you want to share your views or ask any questions, you may raise hand so that I can permit you to unmute yourself.
Hmm.
There are no questions.
Oh
I
my!
guess.
At least someone, please, whether you, please feel free. At least a couple of you, please express yourselves. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Asmita
Asmita.
wants to ask something.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Or she
you can
wants to
unmute
express.
yourself, Asmita.
And Ekta Singh also.
Yes, yes. Asmita, you can unmute yourself.
And Ekta also. Ekta is there.
Okay, Asmita, you can ask.
Or she wants to say
Ma'am, this
something.
interview, is this also, yeah, ma'am, this interview paper, will this, yeah, can we find it on the net and how do we?
It is a paid access paper. All right. So you will need to
Yeah, would you
request
like
it.
to share it
You
with us?
yeah, yeah. All of you, I'll be in trouble
Or
with the
maybe,
publisher. But anyone who is genuinely interested can get in touch. I'll give my email address. You can get in touch with me. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, ma'am, or you can tell us the name and it's in the Scopus. I have
Yes, yes,
the
it is very
Scopus.
much there. I will send the reference. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Surely, surely. And Ekta was wanting to share something.
Yes.
Ma'am, first of all, very good afternoon to all. I actually wanted to express my gratitude. My question was already answered by you, as I was also of the impression that the topic that I have chosen is very new and I could not find much of literature. But then you
Yes,
answered during your session. So thank you very much for that.
thank you, Ekta. I
There were a
hope
lot
that
of insights which will definitely help, ma'am, to because searching for literature becomes very difficult and after a point of time we feel abhi to rasta hi nahi hai, but after
बिल्कुल
this
बिल्कुल.
session, yeah, I have realized there are many new ways through which we can definitely search and figure it out. Thank you.
I'm so glad, Ekta. Yes. So I have enjoyed sharing with you all. So I hope that my hope is that you have been benefited.
Also, ma'am, if you can give some references through which we can get some data for commerce related
Yeah, yeah.
papers.
I'll send the databases of commerce. Yes.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
they
much,
were.
ma'am.
Yeah, I had shared here. 1 second. Huh? I'll just share again. 1 second. Where is this? 1 minute. I had because I came to know that most of you. 1 second. I'll just. Yeah. So 1 minute. Uh, I had just seen here. These were all the for commerce. This is subscription, but you have this business source complete, academic search premier, Cabell, Journalytics, Canadian census Analyzer, Canada, all these are there, which are, and yeah, for commerce. But some of these are other thing, what I do is, all right, I'll just show you in case I can't find it in the database. Suppose I'm interested in linear market trend, suppose, and research paper PDF. Okay, now by writing, so I've written linear market trend research paper PDF. Generally, free access papers which are PDF will become available. So here I have a ResearchGate paper. Remember I talked about ResearchGate. So if I open this, let's have a look. Okay. So, and remember here is the, it's a free paper which you can download full text by Ramaswamy Sita Lakshmi. Analysis of stock market predictor variables using linear. Okay, so, and there's a download citation, you can copy the link, and so on and so forth. Is it not PDF available? Okay, so on and so forth. So you, no, I don't want stock markets. Okay, so, and writing, going through ResearchGate and all that really helps. I'm just going to stop the second. Stop sharing. Okay. All right. So, yes, I guess we have over short time, so we need to stop now.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Because, yes, because people would have made plans as I have also.
I can understand,
Meaning
ma'am.
work
But
plans.
yes,
Work
yes,
plans.
I got it, ma'am.
Yes.
So, ma'am, I really thank you for your time and sharing your expertise. It was great listening to you, and not only about the review of literature, but also the citation and what all are the sources from where we can get a genuine review of literature. And as Ekta ma'am has correctly said that, especially for the newcomers, it becomes really difficult to identify from where to get the review of literature. We feel it's so new. So you have really shown us a right path to move ahead, because review of literature becomes a core part of every research, because that becomes like a pillar based on which we are going to start building our own tower for that matter. So we really thank you from our bottom of my heart for sharing your experience with our participants. Thank you, ma'am.
You're most welcome, and I bid everyone best wishes. And all right, God bless. And I hope, I mean, I will be in touch through Megha. And Megha, you can share my personal email address with them, huh?
Sure, ma'am. I'll
And
do that.
not the principal one. Okay.
Yes,
And thank you, everyone, and have a good day, and all best wishes to all those of you who are engaging with research. Okay, all
yeah.
best wishes for to all the PhD scholars here and to all colleagues. Okay,
Yeah.
then
Thank
bye
you so
bye
much.
everyone. Bye bye, and Dr. Megha, thank you so much for organizing this and for this opportunity. Most
Our
grateful.
pleasure, ma'am. Pleasure.
Most grateful. Okay, thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah. Participants, as yesterday we did, the feedback link will be shared to you in our WhatsApp group. You all need to fill that up as we did it yesterday. And after talking about review of literature, the very next step is all about knowing how to frame the hypothesis, and based on that, how to frame the questionnaire. So to guide us on hypothesis and questionnaire, we'll be having Dr. Yagnesh with us tomorrow. So let's connect on tomorrow again at 10:30 a.m. Goodbye for now.